Welcome to the Drilldown, in-depth answers to oilfield questions. I'm Richard Spears.
And I'm John Spears.
And I was getting a little anxious or a little angry today. I was reading on LinkedIn. Somebody with a podcast said that they were the most popular podcast in energy. And I checked, and it wasn't you making this claim, John. I went, I don't know how popular they are, but I know how popular we are. And then I realized I don't actually know how popular we are.
But our producer, Charlie Spears, does. So
we do. And
what are the numbers?
Yeah, I'm just the fly on the wall usually. But here are the numbers. We get about 3,500 listens an episode, or a little bit over 12,000 a month. And we are a little over 350,000 downloads for the cumulative lifetime of the Drilldown. So thank you all for listening and writing in.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. That's 15 minutes of podcast. That's about 90,000 hours of listening out there, I believe.
90,000 hours. Doing a little math in my head. That's like 12 round trips from Katy to downtown. Pre-COVID virus. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know what episode this is, 150 or 160 or so, but I'm going to double dog dare those other guys to say, well, you tell me how many you've got. So I have no idea if we're the most popular or not, but we have the most loyal fan base all over the planet. Also, Charlie, while you're still on, can you tell where they are on the planet?
Oh, we have listeners all over, of course, mostly in the United States, but Canada, England, Norway, China, Saudi Arabia, Russia, pretty much anywhere that produces oil. Most of our listeners are in North America, but anywhere that produces and consumes oil. So the entire world, basically.
There you go.
I remember, we looked at a heat map of where they were, and we have a bunch of people in China, and I've always said that, there's probably about 1 billion Chinese petroleum engineers who are learning English by listening to my brother and I talk to each other. So if you hear this whiny, oaky accent coming out of a Chinese petroleum engineer, there you go.
That could be it.
Fans of the podcast. Thanks, Charlie. Because
we may owe them all money back if that's the case, if that's where they're learning. But Rich, we did have a podcast last week, which was unprecedented for us because as we were doing it, this was Monday last week, the price of oil went negative, at least for about a day. Something that has not happened much ever before, and we're not out of the woods yet because May might very well see a negative oil prices again out in the marketplace. So we're really in unprecedented waters. Besides that, on the drilling side of the industry, we've lost 50% of the rigs running in a 6-week time span. There's never been that kind of precipitous fall in activity. So we're really in a situation where very little of the experience that we or many folks in the industry have really sort of comes to bear on where we find ourselves today. Isn't that right?
Well, it is, and it is this muddling through, either on purpose or by accident or just by hook and crook. That's what we're going to talk about today.
Sure.
Because there's an infinite number of ways that a person or a company or a country to choose to get through this process. But I think you and I have decided we're going to talk about 2 ways that are from outside the industry, where groups of people were confronted with a really huge set of challenges that they had to overcome. Mm-hmm. And in one way, they overcame it with a set of husbanding their resources and put it all on a single path forward. And then the other way is going to be the way you're going to talk about.
Sure. Which is much more, a technology-based approach. Yeah. So, again, we spend a lot of time here. Most of the time when we get together, we sort of take a lens to events, and we see how things come together to create an event or influence an action. But this time, I think the analogy is we're looking at it through a prism. We want to take things apart and see what was going on and what were the different elements that were taking place. So we're sort of switching the focus, as it were.
And in my case, I've got a plane crash. In your case, you've got pirates.
So let's talk about yours first, okay?
Well, and so mine's a plane crash. And if anybody's been been aware of the big tragedies that have occurred on this planet, you may remember October 1972 when the Uruguayan rugby team, the old Christians, were going to they chartered a plane and they were going to fly over the Andes and go play a friendly match with a team in Santiago, Chile. And this plane was it didn't make it over the Andes for a variety of reasons. And in fact, because it didn't know where it was, the pilots didn't know where they were as they were flying over the Andes in the clouds, they couldn't tell people on the ground where they were, and so they crash landed on a glacier in the middle of this big bowl between mountain peaks. And a lot of the guys died while they were upon landing. A lot of people had broken legs and they did not survive. But dozens of these Uruguayan rugby players survived the plane crash. It's October 1972. And you'll look it up because there's been movies and documentaries and books written about this. But the reason why I'm familiar with it was a few years ago, I had the pleasure of having dinner with Nando Peredo. Yes. And he was the guy. He was one of the two rugby players who, on about day 60 or so, they decided. I mean, here they're in the middle. Winter's just getting harsher. Well, I mean, it's in the Andes at altitude. It's always winter. So they're trapped in the snow. Nobody's coming to get them. They're 2 months into this. They've made the awful decision on about day 15 or 20 that they're gonna have, if they're gonna survive, they're gonna have to eat their dead.
I remember that's the part of the story everybody remembers.
That's right.
Don't remember like how they got rescued.
That's right. But it was so they had this they pick the two guys who are in the best shape. They give them all of their they make a backpack. They give them all the warm clothes they can spare. They give them, let's just say, what's left of the food. And they say, pick a direction, east or west, and off they go.
So it wasn't that these two guys just took off. The group made a decision. They decided two guys. You got to have two. One guy's, if something happens to him, you need So
I gotta have two guys. Okay. And so they husband, or they pooled all their resources. They picked the two they thought had the best chance of getting out alive and going for help. And sent them out on an impossible task to try to get all the way to whatever the other side was, because they didn't know even where the next town was.
So if help's not coming to me, I'm going to go to the help. And so,
because otherwise, all I know is if I stay here and continue to do this, we're all dead.
We're dead, right?
And so they these two guys, Nando and his buddy, they march. It's like 10 days. They get over that mountain. They go over the next mountain. They see a river down there. They get they make this incredible journey downhill through the snow. Finally, get out of the snow. There's still nobody around. They're in the most rural part of Chile. And they finally run out of food, run out of energy, and they're on the side of a river that they cannot cross.
Gotcha.
Now, the fantastic thing is they build a little fire. The fire attracts these rural folks who have burros or little horses, and they're on the other side of the river. And through hook or crook, through messages they toss back and forth, these guys on the other side of the river, they go for help. They bring with them the Chilean Air Force and Army, and they show up with helicopters. Nando gets back in a helicopter on day 72, flies them back to the top of the mountain, and rescues everybody else. Nobody else died. But this is a case where, like I said, they had a finite amount of resources. They had no idea how big a gap they had to cross. But they knew that if they stayed there and did nothing, they were all going to die. And that's example number one, where here we are in the oil and gas industry. we don't know how big a gap we have to cross here, because right now the thing that we sell is valued at about zero.
Yeah, right.
And so I know this. If I keep doing the thing I did, drill more wells, because that's what I do, frack more wells, because I have a frack service company, I'm probably going to die. Yeah. So is this, what do I pick that gets me through the other side that allows?
We certainly see that happening already. I mean, or companies downsizing and so forth, and so they've really gone to this husbanding of resources approach and focus and whatnot. So I have another example here, which is not quite as dramatic, perhaps, but historically maybe more significant. So what I'd like to talk about is the effort that was made back in the 1400s by the Portuguese, who decided that the king decided that he wanted to cut out the Arabic middleman in the trade between Europe and India. And instead, in order to do that, he had to figure out a way to sail around Africa. And that had never been done.
Okay, now what century are we talking about
here? This is the 1400s. Yeah, the 1400s. Prince Henry the Navigator of Portugal. So it was his quest for India. And like I said, they hadn't been done. And there was a huge effort that it took to develop it was mostly a tool development effort that needed to take place in order to get them around Africa and then to India, and then very importantly back as well, right?
Oh, that's right, because you got to bring
not just going one way isn't. Yeah, that's not a win. You got to get there. So this was a tool development effort, and it's just fascinating to think about it because starting off anyway, these sailors from Portugal and so forth that had mostly had ships, and their experience was sailing around the Mediterranean, so hugging the coast, rarely going out into deep water and so forth. So their ships weren't prepared for an ocean-going blue water adventure. So they had to develop these, what they called caravels, which were able to handle the rigor of long ocean-going vessels. So part of the technology was the ships that they were using. There's, of course, a ton of navigational aids. They had to have maps, accurate maps of the coast and of currents. You think about the wind, the star charts they had to have, right? Because once they got south of the equator,
not going to have the northern star anymore.
All their stars are different. So they had to develop a whole host of navigational aids. One of the ones that you read about is called an astrolabe, which is an early version of a sextant for determining where you are from a latitude standpoint. Doesn't help you longitudinally, but it does help you from a latitude standpoint.
Is that when they developed the clock? The clock
came later. Yeah, the clock came about 300 years later. So it was a great idea, but they only had sand timers, right, that they would flip. And unfortunately, those don't work really well when you're on a ship that's going up and down and side to side and things like that. So that's why we get the term, you've heard the term dead reckoning. We people talk, something dead. That's short for deduced reckoning, which was basically the mathematical exercise that ship's captains would take, or navigators would take, based on where they the calculations they'd made, the recordings they'd made based on latitude and longitude and so forth. So that's what we call dead reckoning. Yeah. What do you know?
That's actually the connection between your story and mine, which was those pilots that were flying through the clouds. They were dead reckoning.
Very good. Yes, absolutely right. Yeah. Deduced reckoning.
But your dead is DED.
ED, yes, absolutely right. And then finally, the last little bit about going around Africa was they had to learn the trade winds, right? And in fact, part of their success was, from a counterintuitively standpoint, sometimes sailing away from the coast so that you could pick up the trade wind that would then be behind you and blow you along your journey, right? So,
sure, right. It's like picking up the jet stream.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
So get high enough.
So sometimes the way to get to where you were going was to head the opposite direction for a while, and then so all of this technology had to be developed in order to get them to where they needed to go. And of course, in this particular example, it took them 60 years. By the year, finally, 1498 is when Vasco da Gama was the first European to sail to India. So this was a culmination of a very long effort. And in a sense, that's sort of what the oil patch does as well, doesn't it? From in terms of how long it takes to develop needed technology. But sometimes that's the way to go forward and to succeed and to thrive and whatnot. So,
yeah, if you think about it, one of the older technologies now is the PDC bit or the fixed cutter bit.
Sure.
And if you were still trying to drill a well today with a tricone bit,
yes,
the way we're drilling wells today, in the rocks we're drilling them in, it would simply not be economic to drill a well.
Correct.
But because I advanced the technology to a PDC bit several years ago, now all that's possible, and you see it in directional drilling.
Sure.
The one place where you just don't see a technology advancement in the United States anyway, or in anywhere where you have to crack the rock open, is in hydraulic fracturing. That looks like one of those techniques or tools or technologies that it doesn't look all that different than when it was originally kind of brought to maturity and heck, 30, 40 years ago. It's bigger, but it's really not fundamentally different. So when I think about, these two paths that a company can take or a management team can take or an individual can take, they're not necessarily mutually exclusive.
Right.
But the problem that you're confronting, it's the same. I've got to somehow get from where I am today, it is not sustainable.
Sure, right.
Get all the way over to some other side of a river, some other side of this disastrous time we're in. And I've got to husband my resources. And I might have a technology event or a technique event that I'm able to create that allows me to be the survivor when I get through to the other side.
Oh, absolutely. And any individual company, will make that selection or that decision based on their circumstances, right? So not every company can take the same approach here. Some are bigger, some are smaller, some have a start with technology development, some may not, and so each circumstance is going to be different, right? So,
yep. I can tell you this, however.
Yes.
If you've run out of money and it's the end of May, that was the wrong choice.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
well,
we'll see. Yeah.
Like I hope that some of our 350,000 listens. I actually have no idea. I can't remember any of the number Charlie gave us. But I hope that as people have heard us talk about the Uruguayan rugby team and the choice that they made, and then the Portuguese traders and all the decisions that they made, some idea will spark about a way that you can get through to the other side. All I know is that other side is a really long time from now, and you better be working on it today to figure that thing out. Would you agree, John?
I would agree. Absolutely. Best of luck to everybody. Right.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to the Drill Down. I'm Richard Spears.
And I'm John Spears.